Okay, is it going? All right, okay. This is the Backdrop user group meeting for January 30th, 2025. I'm Justin Kaiser. I'm a developer in Muncie, Indiana, and I like making Contrib projects for Backdrop. At any rate, we are going to demo some new Contrib projects in Backdrop Contrib that have been released recently in this meeting. And I'll shift over to Tim for an introduction, or Tim Stalker.
Thanks. I'm Tim Stalker. I work for the University of Colorado, Denver. I'm based in Louisville, Colorado, and I've been working with Drupal 5, 6, and 7 for a long time. And I didn't quite make the jump to Drupal 8, 9, 10, 11, So, yeah, I'm just really interested in getting started and converting a potentially large project of an installation profile into Backdrop.
Great. I'll go ahead. I'm the other Tim. Two-thirds of us today are Tims. And I'm Tim Erickson, St. Paul Tim on the internet and in a lot of the forums and GitHub. I'm in Deerwood, Minnesota. We have a beautiful sunny day today. And what we're going to talk about today is, as Justin already alluded to, we're going to demo some modules. I like these little hope to get a few more people here, but to show off some of the work they're doing, but we're going to go ahead. Recording this means that other people can watch these later. I recently released a really kind of small trivial module, but I think it would be fun to show off that. And as I was browsing through, I noticed some other interesting modules that have been released lately that I think most people haven't heard about yet. And Justin is responsible for one or two of them. And I thought this would be a chance for us to just do a recorded demo where we could show some of the modules that have been coming out recently and spark some interest. So I'm going to start sharing my screen. And this is the agenda document that we haven't been using very well, but we usually keep available for these meetings. So to start out with, I'm just going to show for folks who are sort of new to the community, if you're probably aware, if you go to Backdrop add-ons and you go to modules, one of the ways you can find recent modules that have been released is just the default display here basically shows modules based on their release date. Now, these don't necessarily mean they're new modules. It just means they have new releases. So, for example, Tiny MCE paging. Nope, this is probably a brand new module. Yep, there's already two releases, but both of them were today. I think if somebody updates a module, it also jumps to the top of the list here. However, most of what I'm seeing, we can tell by the number of downloads that they're probably pretty new modules. Let's skim to, here's one with like 19. And so if we look at that one, this one might very well be. No, that's also a brand new. That's interesting. A module that only came out in January. Oh, it's 19 downloads, not installs. Okay. Okay. Anyways, it doesn't matter. But so it looks like all of these modules have like 0 or 1 installs, which indicates that they're new modules, not old modules with a release. Let's try one more and just see. Nope, that's also a new module. Okay. So one of the modules, as I was just browsing through this list, one of the modules I ran into was the config deploy. And I just clicked on this quick. It's still a beta release. Robert Garagos, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right, Robert. Oh, I'm not sharing my screen yet, am I? Hey, you guys got to interrupt me. I've been scrolling around pointing things out on my screen, and I wasn't even sharing. You can see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay. Well, so I won't go through everything I did, but just say that basically what you heard me talking about was going to the module screen and sort of browsing through this page. By default, Backdrop lists modules based on the release date. So the most recent ones are the ones that have just come out. Okay. And of course, you can filter by, filter by titles and see much older modules. But so we were going to look at this config import, and Robert had hoped to come today and demonstrate it himself, but he wasn't able to. I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate it without him, and then hopefully he can come back and do it again another time and answer questions. But this is a module that I'm kind of excited about because it's going to help me build more recipes. Joseph Flatt had been working on a module like this as well, and I'm hoping this is just the beginning of something. Now, I have a local site set up on my local laptop. That's what we're looking at now. I use, you know what I'm going to do though? I'm going to quickly reset. I have some scripts where I spin up sites for experimenting, and I take a snapshot of them, and then I can reset them. So this is what I did was just reset this back to its default situation. Nothing's enabled, nothing's been changed. There shouldn't be any content here. So let's go list modules, and we're going to go config deploy. This is the first one we're going to look at. And this demo is based on me just discovering this module and spending 15 or 20 minutes with it. So I don't have deep knowledge or experience with it, but I did test it, and it does do something that I'm pretty excited about. So once you've enabled it, if you go under development, under configuration management, it adds this config deploy. And the first thing it's asking me is that it's warning me that my private file system needs to be configured. So I'm going to go to media file system and just add a private directory. Well, do you have a best practice rather than me doing something random, Justin? Like, what do you know? What a normal thing people would do with this?
That probably looks all right to me.
Something like that. Okay.
I don't ever generally use private files, so when I
Right.
get warnings like that, I fill in that field with somewhere that it can reach, and then it will work. But you
Well,
should put that out of your, should
right.
put that outside of your
Yeah.
backdrop install.
Yes, a very common thing to do with this would be something like this, right? So you're basically telling it to look outside of your doc root for your private file. So these are not inside the backdrop config file. And this is what my team would likely do on client sites. In most cases, do something along those lines. Although, as Justin said, a lot of times we don't really have private files, so it's not an issue. So anyways, I go ahead and I save that. I come back to this, and so now it works. And basically what I'm noticing is that it just says create a snapshot. And this is already a clue to me on what's going to happen here, is that basically what this site is going to allow us to do is create a snapshot. So I do that, and now it's looking in the active and the staging directory. Backdrop has, well, it's not even doing that. It's basically there's an active directory of config files, and then it's just created a snapshot, and it's comparing those two, and it's saying there are no changes, which is true because we haven't done anything. We just took the snapshot. So the snapshot looks exactly like the current active directory. Okay. So now if I go ahead and make some config changes, and I'm going to do something really basic, I'm going to create a new content type very quickly. I'm going to call it event. I'm going to save it and add a couple of fields. We want a date field for our, event. I won't do anything else with this field other than set it up. And I'm going to do one more and call it the venue for our event. And we'll just make that a short text field. Okay, just to keep things simple. And that's really all I'm going to do here. It's enough for this demo. I'm going to do one more thing though, which is create a view of all events, and it'll be a super simple view. Events of all content type called events. And I'm just going to save it the way it is. So in theory, this would be a list of events, but we don't actually have any. And we don't need any content to use this module. This module has nothing to do with content. It has to do with config. So now what happens is if I go back to the deploy, config management deploy, okay, now suddenly there's a bunch of things here. And what's happening is Backdrop is comparing, or this module is comparing that snapshot, and it's saying which config files are different from the snapshot. And basically, these are all new configuration files that have been added, and then there's 2 that have been modified. And to be absolutely honest, I'm not sure. Well, let's look at the differences. Oh, it's because when we added a new content type, new permissions were created by default for the editor role. And the same thing is true of the administrator. Now, if you were, this doesn't, it appears the module at this time doesn't give us the ability to we can basically, in this case, deploy, I think just means export. Well, I know that's what it means. It means it's going to bundle up all these config files and export them. Now, this is where having Robert here would help. And if he comes back, we can talk to him more about this. I think the config changes aren't that useful to us because when you import config files into another site, it is there are some generally you have to do all of them or not, or one at a time. You can't do batches of them, but you can put batches of them into a module and then add them to another site. And so but the problem is if we added these config files to that other to that module, Backdrop would ignore them because they exist already. And Backdrop will only import new ones. It won't overwrite existing ones through the module method. You could import these individually using, you could go to the config manager and do single import, and you could copy and import them this way, in which case I'm pretty sure it would overwrite. Do you know, Justin?
Yes,
If you import an existing config file this way, it'll overwrite the existing config.
Yeah, but
I'm
if they're
pretty
the
sure.
same, if they're the same, it won't do anything.
Right. No, but I'm saying if there's been a change.
Right.
Right. Because if you import an existing config file with changes through a module, a Backdrop just ignores it. It doesn't actually overwrite it or import it at all. It just imports new files if you do it that way.
Oh, well, if you do a
Right.
single import from one site to another and it's different, it will change.
It won't change?
It will change.
Yeah, it will change. Right. Good.
It'll
Okay.
override.
Yes. So this would be if we really wanted. Now, no, I didn't lose anything. If we really wanted these changes, we could manually make them, or we could import them individually. Well, we'll have to look and see if Robert has another way to import these as a batch. I'm interested in this module because let's say I wanted to create an event recipe. I would do what I've just done, which is I would get a site, I would take a snapshot, and then I would make all the changes I want to my event recipe. And now I can just hit download and deploy, and it basically exports all of those documents. I could drop those into a module folder, and basically I would have a recipe. You know, if I'd have to configure it like it would need a .info file. It would need a .module file, but there doesn't have to be anything in the .module file. And then it would need a config directory with all of these files. And if I just dropped them in there and then uploaded it as a module, Backdrop would import all of the new config files, and I would have that content type now active on my new site. So it's not as smooth as I would like the process as I would like it to be, but it's pretty easy doing something like this to basically based on my current knowledge, that this is the way I would use this module.
There,
Go ahead. Do you have any questions or anything to add or anything I
there's a
missed?
caveat with this module right now. I
Yep.
thought I had looked, I thought I looked at the code and I thought this was the case, and then I confirmed with Robert on Zulip.
Okay.
It doesn't work with database config. It only works with files config right now.
I would have assumed that to be the case, but that's good for you to check. I would have assumed. I mean, just partly because it's looking at JSON and stuff.
Well,
Right.
if you use database config, it's still basically JSON
Is it?
in the
Okay.
database.
Okay.
It would look the
Um,
same there. It wouldn't.
well, we
It's
should have
just
let. Yeah. Since this video might be watched by some beginners, we should elaborate on the fact that until fairly recently, Backdrop did all of it, managed all of its, and today, Backdrop by default manages all of its config in JSON files, not in the database. However, we very recently introduced the possibility to use the database instead of JSON files for config. And so what uh, Justin is telling us is that this would not work with if you had your config in the database. So, did I get that right, Justin?
Yep.
Okay.
You
Any
think,
other? Go
do
ahead.
you think that's why it's called partial? Partial, I think
The name of the module was just config deploy.
yeah, and then the description or something was for partial config management. And I was wondering if that's because it's only file based.
No.
No,
No,
well, I don't think that's why. I think we'd have to ask Robert to know
yeah,
for sure. But the reason I would expect, because I have used that term before, having nothing to do with the database, and the reason is that by default, assume this deploy thing isn't there, right? And you're going to do config management. You have two choices in Backdrop. You can either export files individually, one at a time, or you can do all of them. And I think the reason he said partial is that this allows you to get a batch and do a partial export. So
oh,
this is the only way that you can export like a batch of files without either doing them individually or full.
got you.
Okay. So I don't think that it looks to me, I don't see any option with this module. What would be nice is if this module would also let you import a batch. Okay. And it does, and that could be a future thing that Robert is planning. We'd have to ask him that. But right now, there's no UI for that. However, even without that, as I've told you, it's super easy to drop these into a module, and just treat them as a module. And yesterday at office hours, we were talking to Tim Stalker about features in Drupal. And that would be a little, features in Drupal 7 were basically modules that did something like this. And this would be a way of kind of creating a feature type module, although it's much more limited than features. Features gave you a lot more capacity than this does. But this would let you sort of create something like a feature, a very simple one. Any other questions about this? Maybe if Robert's watching this video, he'll forgive me if I've mangled anything or missed any important features. I assume the delete feature is just deleting the snapshot. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, which is fine. And now, so yeah, I already exported my config. So now that I've deleted that, I have no snapshot and it's fresh, and I could create a new snapshot. I could make some more changes and then do another export if, for example, I wanted to. Okay.
I have a question here.
Yeah.
So the deploy creates a snapshot of config file so you can compare them, right?
Yes.
So if you click on synchronize,
Right. Well, the config deploy module, this is the only thing it does, right? But this is what this is default backdrop now. This is
right?
the default backdrop synchronize feature, and it's basically saying there are no changes. I'll tell you what, though, but it is a good point. Let's do another snapshot, and I'll just make one change, okay? Let's just go to
Okay.
our content type and add one more field. My brain's freezing, so we're just going to do a short text field by the name of color. I think it's interesting to look at the difference between what we were just go back to configuration. See, if we go to synchronize, there's not going to be any change here. Or should there be? But if we go to deploy, what this is comparing the current Active Directory with the snapshot that we created a minute ago. So it's showing us any changes that we've made to the site and to the live directory. If we were doing if we had staged config, this doesn't care about staged config. It doesn't look at that at all. Okay. What config does is what config synchronize does is looks at the staging directory and says, is there anything in the staging directory that's not in the Active Directory? And if so, it would tell you that. I think the reason we're seeing nothing here is because this is a brand new site and there is nothing in the staging directory. So there's nothing to compare. Does that make sense?
So I have a quick.
Yep.
Can you go back to deploy?
Yep.
So basically, if I say download deploy file, it will only download these two items. Is that correct?
Exactly.
Okay, because this supplements a set of other things.
Yes.
That are available for configuration management. And this is very helpful if I want to create something that's related to only one configuration. So that is very interesting.
Yes.
I'm using different tools so I have direct config save. Thank you very much, Justin. But this is different. So thank you.
Okay. Well, we might look at config save, I think, in a minute. Justin was maybe going to show us that. Is that true, Justin? Like config, you're up.
Yeah, and I thought of another one to show off too.
Okay, good. So we'll go ahead and look at those other modules now. If there's no more questions about this, I would be really interesting to hear from Robert, like how he is using this module. I think he's using it because I've talked to him before. I think he's using it similar to me to kind of create feature-like modules. So I think he exports the config, drops them into a module, and then can import them into another site. But I can imagine that other people might use it a little differently, and I'll be curious to hear how other people end up using this. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. Let's move on. We spent too much time on that. That was supposed to be a teaser for Robert to come back. Justin, are you ready, or should I stall some more?
I'm ready. Hold on. I'm altering the config deploy so it works with database config.
Okay. Well, hey, you're about to give a demo. Save that for later.
I know. Okay. Where's the screen share? There's the screen share. Okay. So can you see my screen?
Not yet.
Yeah. Oh, I gotta click share.
It came. I see it.
All right.
It's coming. There it is.
We're good. Okay. I got a couple things. I got a few things here. The module that we were just talking about, config direct save. When you turn it on, it adds a new tab to the configuration manager called update. And what this does is, in the past, like when you wanted to export your config, you had to just download the file. There's no way in the UI to directly export your configuration to the staging directory. You have to use Drush or download and upload and do stuff. But the config direct save exports it from the UI directly to the staging directory. So you don't have to deal with downloads and uploads and all that stuff.
So it says config source is staging. Is that I'm confused if that's the destination or the source.
It's the destination.
Okay.
I should probably change this stuff, but this is exactly the way it looks in Drupal, and that was the port. So
Okay.
I actually don't like that it says update up here either in the tab because I don't think that's what it does.
Right.
So if folks have suggestions for changing the wording on here, I think we can safely do that after it's been ported now.
So, because this is something people have a lot of questions about, maybe we should talk briefly about why you would want to do this. Justin, do you or Irina, either of you want to talk about how you use or want to use this? Why this is helpful to you? I can speculate, but I haven't actually used it.
Which one? The update?
Yeah,
Yes.
this config direct save. Like, what is the use case that you have for this module?
This is a very important use case that allows me to do most of my work in UI when I'm configuring content types, blocks, taxonomies, views, anything that I can configure through UI. But then if I want to put them under source control, then I do two things. I follow instructions on how to set up. I'm moving my configuration directory to the place where give me a second, configuration management. So I have this configuration management for site builders. It is not complete document, like it needs a second part. The first part is written based on information available on backdrop.org. Jen has a couple of articles, there's a couple of demos. So what happens here, the first part is, I'm just glancing through. So first part is where I set up staging directory. Share screen.
Oh,
Justin might have to stop first.
Yeah, can you just click on the doc that I opened? I send the link to document in chat. So the important part is where we set. It is further down, and this information is available all over the place. Is where you keep scrolling. This is like introduction, but if you keep scrolling more, keep going. There is a line that's right here. So like right here. So I put my config under staging, and then I make change in settings PHP. And this is like set up config directory. And once I set up config directory, if you go back to the demo part, to the site, wherever you set config directory, if you click here, export active direct configuration to staging, it should work. I am not sure why. Can you roll over? I'm not sure why yours is. Can you click on it?
Yeah.
No, on the configuration. So if you click on it, oh yeah, now it looks correctly. So click on it, and then what happens, all the files from Active Directory will be exported in your staging directory. If your staging directory, and then if you make another change, you will also see it under synchronized tab. The difference with the deploy module is that deploy allows you to download only files that were changed, which is really super cool when you're creating a feature. And then this one allows you to makes your DevOps much easier because now you can restore. You can have staging directory and you can restore. You can go back 3 iterations. Say, oh, this is what I committed. These are the changes that I made. If that makes sense.
This, yeah. So what
so you can
Irina's
actually
talking,
add it. You can add a third directory. Gotcha.
well, okay, maybe you could, but I don't think that's necessary to get the benefit
Right.
from this, right? Is that it's a very common workflow for developers is to have a staging directory, and you can use that in one of 2 different ways. And usually the staging directory is in source control, right? Like Get, you commit that to Get. but you don't necessarily commit your Active Directory. And I think a lot of developers, the idea is that they import their staging directory from a dev site. And then when you synchronize, Backdrop compares what are the new config files and you update them. Okay. And that's why the staging directory is there, so that Backdrop can see what the changes are and make sure you can approve them before you do them. Well, let's say you've imported your config from staging, and then you make another tweak and you change something. Now your Active Directory is out of sync with your staging directory. And this module would let you sort of save those things back into staging and say, okay, I've made some changes to my Active Directory. I want to save those to staging, and then I can commit them in staging. Hopefully I didn't make things worse with that description.
We ready for the next one?
Yeah. Oh, was there a question?
I was just going to say, so the module's really eliminating the need to do that with commands copying on the file system to do that manually.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Normally you would have like went to your file system and moved to the files from the active to staging and then committed them. This lets you do it in the UI.
Or use B, but you know.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Anything else on this one? Otherwise we can move on. Did you had another
just a general comment that is,
go ahead.
You know, the purpose of this is to make life of site builders much easier and ability to track things and make DevOps smooth rather than complex.
Yeah. Okay. So did you have one more config module, Justin?
No.
Oh, that's good.
I want to finally, I don't think I've talked about search and replace scanner.
Okay.
This was one of my favorite Drupal modules to find and replace, to change text in the entire website. Like one of the use cases I had for it was when I switched from using public files to using S3 files, and I needed to change the links in my body fields everywhere to go from site's default files to my S3 bucket. So I could do it with this search and replace scanner module instead of doing it in MySQL. So when you turn this module on, you get a settings page with like turning on case sensitive search and matching the whole word and using regular expressions and whatnot. But the important part for at least me is selecting the fields that you're going to actually do the search in. And this searches paragraphs as well, because I use paragraphs a lot. The Drupal 7 module that I ported did not originally search paragraphs. But to show an example of this, like I have this post here, Indiana winner. So I'm going to change Indiana in the title, the body field, and the paragraph to say Ohio. So I'm going to do the search for Indiana, replace with Ohio. Search, found it in 3 fields, the body paragraph, the post, and the title, or the body and the title. I'm going to replace. And then if I go to it, I have Ohio, Ohio, and Ohio. But I messed up my images. So there's a trick there that you've got to tell it that you don't want to, but I can undo that to fix it back again. So there's an undo screen here, and I'm going to undo it and continue and return to it, and everything's going to work again. But the reason that it messed up my images is because Indiana is actually in the
File name.
file name.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
there was a way that you can get around that if you run into a problem, thankfully, to the undo by doing something here in the surrounding text, like say only if I say Indiana only followed by space winter. I think it's gonna work that time. Yeah. But it didn't get the third one. So maybe it's still a work in progress at some points, but I did do a lot of testing on it before it got released, and it was working everywhere. I don't think it reverted correctly in the paragraph. The paragraphs are tough because that wasn't part of the initial port. So, live demos, everything always goes wrong.
Yes.
So, I'll perhaps take a look at that. But the other fun one is the Konami code module that I ported from Drupal. And it's like an Easter egg module. So you can enable this and select from all of these actions. And when you put in a key code sequence, which
You want to do a shorter? Okay, that's fine.
this is the guide to the key code sequences. So the default one is up, up, down, down, left, right, B, A. So I added 2 new actions today. The Cheetos font and the airplane. This was the Cheetos font
Yeah, I saw that.
is something that an ad that I saw yesterday, and it looks like their Super Bowl ad or something. So I've enabled this one and saved the configuration, and I can go back to the home page here. And if I do the code, up, up, down, down, left, right, BA, it turned everything into that goofy font.
Cheetos, yeah.
And my favorite one is not that one. It is this one.
Oh, yeah, got to do that one.
So if we go back to the home page, up, up, down, down, left, right, BA, I have an asteroids game, and I can shoot the stuff on my website and make it go away. Yay!
So,
Great. I'd put a picture of an administrator there.
Justin, what you need to do is, for the next Backdrop Live, is have a session on just fun modules, silly fun modules, and show
These
all
are my jam. I love these things.
we ought to have like a filter category on backdrop.org for just kind of the silly fun modules, like the pirate speak module and ones like that.
Whee!
Oh, looks like Irina has to leave. Good to see you, Irina.
Sorry, I had a little bit time today, but I wanted to stop by and say hello, and it's to see all the great things. Deploy is definitely something I will be using when we're building new features. And it's great to have 2 teams here. Tim Starker, I hope you are getting into the pace and learning all the things that you need in. And
Definitely.
I think that community is here. So
Okay.
it will be a great project. All right. Thanks a lot, guys. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
And Justin, I'll send you as soon as I have something, I'll send it to you right away. Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have a hard stop soon. Tim, hopefully you didn't prepare. I don't think we have time to do your thing. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
What I'm going to recommend is you come to office hours next week, and we can record from office hours too. And
Okay.
maybe we record just the part where you just show the issue that you're working on. And
Okay.
then we could do the same thing. Then we could share that with members of the community to give you advice. So I still think we should do that. Because we're short of time, I think I'm going to show one more module, which is one that we just released for a client of ours that's really simple, and it is, I think, going to be useful to some people, but it's a kind of a niche case. Okay, so I'm sharing my screen. This is for a site that uses revisions a lot. Okay, the client uses revisions a lot, and their question to us was in this scenario, you go to the about, you click on revisions. You know, this, I'm going to have to go back and look at their site because I think the situation with their site is, so you're on a revision. And in this case, it's pretty obvious that you're on a revision because it's got this big word right here. And I think what happens on their site is that this title where it says revision about is like way up at the top. And then as you're scrolling down, you're looking at the content. You might not realize you're on the revision page or whatever. And they just wanted to make it more obvious that you were looking at a revision as opposed to the live content. There is something, the analogy to this would be if we created a new node page test, just put some nonsense in here and save it as a draft. When you're saving this as a draft, it looks like the usual, but there's this warning and you can't quite see it, but I'm pretty sure there's a light pink background. Maybe if we do an inspect, we can see it. So there's a div unpublished, and there is kind of well, that's that message content. Can anybody else verify, or because I can't see it here, is it possible that that's something unique to my other site, or does by default backdrop put a background behind unpublished content?
I believe it puts a background behind it.
I think so, and I'm not sure if I'm just visually not seeing it. Anyways, it's a little bit irrelevant. I mean, you know, so double check this, but they wanted something a little bit more distinct for revisions, okay? And what I did was my colleagues and I whipped up a module called Revision Helper, and I haven't downloaded it yet. We just released this a few days ago. And it is a super simple module that once you've enabled it under config authoring, it gives you the revision helper, and it lets you change the background color. So if you want a different background color behind revisions from unpublished content, you can do that. And then it also allows you to have a status message, and you can turn this on or off if you want. I'm going to go ahead and save this. We'll quickly go to content. We'll go to the about page, and then we'll go open up a revision. And now we can see we added this status message. We could disable those if we want, but we also put a background. So anytime you're looking at a revision, there's a background behind it, and you can very easily change that color to whatever you want. Save config, content, about. There you go. You've changed that color. So if you want it lighter, darker, different color, you can do that. So that's it. It's a pretty simple module, probably not used to. I think some people might really love it, but it'd probably be a small number of people. About the other, I mean, for me, it was cool. This is a really simple. I don't think I have time. I was gonna show you the code because it's a pretty simple thing to write a module to do something like this. We can talk about that another time. We're out of time today. So any questions about this, any of the modules we looked at today? Any comments? No? Okay, well, I would say about half of this session today was on config management, which was cool. And then a few other modules, but hopefully folks enjoyed this, and hopefully folks will enjoy the video later and learn about some new modules. I actually have a question, Justin, about your module, because I was sort of preparing something else when you started.
Which one?
And the search and replace one.
Okay.
So was that, so basically that's like a UI to do a database search and replace. Is that correct?
Correct.
Does it only search and replace within like nodes, or does it do the entire database?
It does specific fields. You
Okay.
select the fields that you want to search, and
Okay.
the entities in the fields that you want to search.
Okay.
So I had it turned on for my posts, the post title, the post body, and the paragraph.
I have a client, this won't solve all of their needs, but the same client who wanted that revision helper thing, they have thousands of articles, right?
Right.
And they have occasionally wanted to go back and do sort of wholesale search and replace through all their articles. And we have done manual database scans, right? So we do a search and replace directly in the database. This would be a nice shortcut for that. Yeah.
The module is actually better than doing it in the database because it has the undo.
Right, and it's targeted. Although you can target you could target your database search, but it's a little harder. This makes it a lot easier. I love it, but your point about the undo, that is really cool. Yep. Okay, I think I'm just going to show them this module and say and offer it to them. If they want this, then they can. There's some of the search and replaces they've wanted to do might extend beyond the body field or the fields. So, although probably not.
It could. I was thinking that I need to have it work with blocks because it does work with blocks in Drupal because blocks are entities. But since our blocks are just config,
Okay.
it doesn't, but it could.
Okay. Well, a database search and replace wouldn't work either there
No.
if the blocks are in config. So one of the scenarios they've had is they've got some really old content that was probably cut and pasted and has these weird characters that don't show up correctly, right? Like an apostrophe is incorrect.
Oh, encoding problems. I've come across
problems.
those.
And would this be good for fixing encoding problems, doing sort of search and
It
replace?
might not catch those.
Okay.
But are we still recording?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I dealt with that in a Drupal upgrade, encoding issues.
Okay.
And I have some code that could help with that sort of thing.
Okay, let's talk about that later because I do have to go right now. I have another meeting that's just starting. So thank you guys for being here. I'm going to stop the recording. Had a good time, and I'm going to jump off here more abruptly than usual. And we'll see you all